My husband brought home a Burmese python without consulting me after our corn snake died, and now I'm stressed out about our cat, my anxiety, and our future. Maybe this would be more fitting for our snakes, but I feel this issue is less about the python itself and more about my relationship with my husband. So, in my opinion, it belongs here. 6 months ago, our beloved corn snake passed away unexpectedly. My husband 26M and I 24F were both heartbroken. He was such a cute little guy and still very young. My husband has had several small reptiles throughout his life, and he mentioned wanting to try a milk snake this time instead of a corn or a garter. However, just 2 months after our corn snake died, he came home with a baby Burmese python. Apparently, it's always been his dream to own one of these snakes. Honestly, I'm really upset that he made such a big decision without consulting me first. On the upside, they're legal where we live, but I had several reservations about owning a Burmese python that have only grown since we got him. First off, I have generalized anxiety disorder GAD, and this snake triggers my anxiety like nothing else. While researching Burmese pythons, I stumbled across countless stories about them attacking pets, children, and even their owners. This has left me completely freaked out and barely sleeping for the past 4 months. To make matters worse, my husband has no experience with large snakes, and as the python grows, my anxiety increases. We also have a cat, and the other snakes we've owned are corn snake and my husband's old garter snake posed no threat to her. Now, I'm constantly worrying that the python might escape and eat her. I've started locking the cat in our bedroom at night, which disrupts our sleep because she meows and scratches at the door. I can't help but worry about her when she's home alone, too. Let me emphasize, this python is massive. He's already 6 feet long, and he's still growing. Since I'm home more than my husband, I find myself taking care of the snake, which includes feeding it and changing its substrate often. To say I hate doing both would be an understatement, especially now that he's graduated to eating rabbits and pigs. Honestly, since my husband bought him without even consulting me, I believe that caring for the snake should be entirely his responsibility. However, I can't let it go hungry or live in filth just because of my pride. I'm genuinely worried that we won't be able to provide this snake with the quality of life it deserves, which I believe is crucial for any pet. He's already getting too big for his tank, which is his 3rd since we got him, and I don't think we have enough space in our house for the enclosure my husband wants to build. Plus, the cost of feeding him is high and eating into our savings. While I know he needs the right food, I worry that he might eat us out of house and home in the long run. Finally, I don't want to have kids while we own a python. These snakes can live for up to 20 years, and I'm concerned that I might have to give up my dream of having children because of this snake. It's a lot to handle, and I really don't know what to do moving forward. Because of all these reasons, especially my concerns about our cat and the quality of life for the snake, I believe we should rehome the python preferably to a wildlife sanctuary or a similar place. I've gently brought this up with my husband, explaining how much mental anguish this situation causes me, how worried I am about our cat, and how the snake's care is unsustainable. Sadly, all he's done is tell me to get over it, accuse me of not caring about his happiness, and claim I'm being prejudiced against animals that aren't cute and cuddly. This isn't true. I genuinely liked his smaller snakes. So, how can I communicate effectively with my husband about this issue? He clearly loves the snake, and I think that's clouding his judgment and preventing him from seeing things reasonably. Edit. For all the snake enthusiasts out there, I now acknowledge that our husbandry practices are probably wrong, which just proves my point even more. I've also learned that the snake likely isn't a baby if it's already this size, so that's something to consider. I admit I'm not the most knowledgeable about snakes. Update 1. First off, I want to say thank you for all the support I've received, especially from the reptile enthusiasts who happen to be browsing this sub. You guys are awesome. Now, for what everyone really wants to know, the snake is gone and my cat is alright. Here's how it happened. Thursday night, while I was replying to comments on my post, several people suggested I talk to my husband's friend, who owns Burmese pythons and is an experienced reptile keeper. I had been too blinded by the situation and my own anxiety to even consider that. So I messaged him on Facebook that same night and explained everything. He was shocked to hear how bad things were, but mentioned that he had tried to warn my husband that going from small snakes to a Burmese python is like thinking that owning house cats qualifies you to own a tiger. Unfortunately, my husband didn't listen. This friend has been busy attending reptile shows. He breeds venomous cobras, kind of a badass. So he had only seen the snake in person once when we first got it. He was immediately disturbed when I told him about the overfeeding, my husband's intention to start feeding it live food, and the fact that it was allowed to free roam and was often left alone. He told me he would come over the next day, Friday, to have a serious talk with my husband and help us figure out how to rehome the snake. I decided I couldn't spend another day in that house with the python, and neither could my cat, so on Friday morning, I moved out to my mom's place while my husband was at work. It felt a bit sneaky, but I knew that if I tried to leave while he was home, he would try to convince me to stay. I called him during his lunch break to let him know I had left and that I wouldn't be back until the snake was gone. He was very upset, but started accusing me of being petty and letting a snake ruin our marriage. I didn't have anything productive to say to that, so I just told him I'd talk to him later. Well, my husband's friend was furious when he saw the snake. When he arrived at our house, after my husband got home from work, he gave him the tongue lashing of a lifetime. He told my husband, in no uncertain terms, that now that he had witnessed how woefully inadequate we were as keepers of a big snake, there was absolutely no way the python could stay with us. The yelling clearly impacted my husband. When he drove over to my mom's to talk to me, he looked like a kicked puppy. He broke down and told me that he loved me and was sorry for the hell he had put me through. He admitted that it took being yelled at by an expert for him to finally understand what was happening, and that he now realized the snake could no longer live with us. But I knew that the sorrow he felt was mainly about losing the snake, not about a real understanding of the situation, not yet. Anyway, so don't worry, he's not completely off the hook. Still, it was cathartic to hear him express those feelings. His friend contacted a herpetology society he works with, and they connected us with a member who specializes in rehabilitating snakes that irresponsible pet owners neglect. The snake went to this guy's ranch yesterday, where he'll be fed properly and apparently go on a diet, and live in a space big enough for him to thrive. My husband and I have talked a lot since then, and he admitted that his intense desire to fulfill his childhood dream made him careless and selfish. He wasn't trying to be malicious toward me. He just wanted that snake so badly that he would do and say anything to keep it. It seems like he hasn't fully learned from this experience yet. I'm not expecting him to understand everything right away, but it's still a bit disappointing. Just yesterday, he mentioned wanting to get a ball python, and I put my foot down. I firmly believe we shouldn't get another snake for a long time. On Sunday, I sat him down and asked him to tell me the truth about how he ended up with the python. Walking into a pet shop looking for a milk snake and just finding a Burmese sounded more and more implausible the more I thought about it. He finally admitted that he had actually arranged to get one from a breeder online, while he was telling me he wanted a smaller snake. This meant he was actively lying to me. To make matters worse, the breeder was located a state away, which means my husband participated in something illegal by meeting up with him, as transporting Burmese pythons across state lines is against the Lacey Act. I was furious. I felt betrayed by his lies and hurt that he dismissed my concerns for months. He admitted he lied because he knew I would say no, which shows a level of immaturity that honestly disgusts me. He also mentioned he has been going through a quarter-life crisis, feeling like he should have accomplished more by the age of 26, especially since he never went to college. I feel some sympathy for him regarding that, but it's no excuse for treating me poorly. I moved back home with my kitty last night, but I can't shake the feeling that our marriage is in serious jeopardy right now because of the lying and the disrespect my husband has shown me. I made vows to stand by him, and I don't take those lightly. We're planning to start counseling soon, which I hope will help him genuinely understand what was wrong with his actions, not just give a knee-jerk response because he feels in trouble. I'm hoping this experience will ultimately strengthen our relationship. But if it doesn't, well, I might have to seriously consider my options. Some people were saying in my previous post that we were feeding the snake guinea pigs and that I was lying to make the snake look worse. I admit I wasn't completely honest, but not in that way. We were actually feeding it dead piglets. My husband's cousin runs a working ranch with several pigs, and my husband was buying them from him for a pretty penny. I hesitated to mention this before because I thought people would focus on the snake eating baby animals and start calling for its blood instead of offering me advice. Update 2. Hey everyone, I'm back. The snake is still gone, but I guess I'm reaching out again out of desperation since so many people message me wanting to know how I'm doing. On the surface, therapy has been going well. My husband has been doing everything right. He's been contrite, open-minded, and treats me like a princess all the time. At home, I can see he's making a conscious effort to listen to my opinions and thoughts, incorporating our therapist's suggestions into our daily lives. but I feel like the biggest jerk saying this, but I just don't think it's enough. Over the past few weeks, I've had to confront the fact that something about how I view my husband has fundamentally changed. After a lot of soul searching a few days ago, I finally realized what it is. I have lost respect for his intelligence after everything that has happened. This is extremely important to me, and now it feels completely gone. I'm not sure how it can come back without him having a complete personality overhaul. It's also affected my physical attraction to him. Normally, I have a pretty high libido, and before all this, we made love 4 to 5 times a week. Since everything went down, though, we've only been intimate 3 times. To be fair, while the snake was here, we were down to 2 to 3 times a week, but that was still more frequent than what we're experiencing now. Despite all the changes he's making, he's still himself, and I'm struggling to like the person I now know him to be. He's still that goofy, absent-minded guy who needs me to balance the checkbook and pack his lunch every day. I can't respect that anymore. I don't want to be his mom or some nagging sitcom wife. I used to love doing those things for him. Throughout our relationship, I've taken care of him, patched him up, and helped him solve his problems. I always thought it was the ultimate expression of love, but now I'm just so sick of it. He can tell something's still off. He's getting irritated about my lack of forgiveness and my dwindling sex drive, especially since he's objectively doing all the right things. But his inability to understand my apprehension only magnifies my feelings. The other day, it hit me hard. I love him dearly as a friend. I've known him since I was 9 years old, but I no longer feel that way about him as a husband. That realization devastates me. I can't believe I'm even contemplating divorce after less than a year of marriage. It makes me feel like such a failure. I haven't brought these feelings up in therapy as yet because they just crystallized a few days ago. I don't know how to start the conversation because I know that saying them out loud might mean the end of my marriage. I've talked to my mom and friends about this, and they all tell me to wait it out, to stick with it because I made vows. But I feel like I've uncovered something fundamental about my husband that I wish I never had to know. And now I can't shake the feeling that nothing can ever be the same again. Update 3. 9 years later. Basically, my ex-husband brought home a Burmese python after telling me he wanted a milk snake. I was really scared of it and felt anxious, but he was incredibly dismissive of my worries. In the end, I had to get the snake shipped off to a reptile ranch, but that whole experience absolutely shook my trust in him because he had been lying to me. It also opened my eyes to how much he relied on me to do everything for him, almost like I was his second mother, and honestly, I hated that feeling. I really tried to work through the feelings I posted about in the second update, but after 3 months of separation, we decided to go our own ways. It's totally okay if you judge me for this because I judge myself. After being apart for half a year, we ended up having sex. It happened after my grandma had just died, and I was utterly devastated. He came to the funeral to support me since he'd known her forever and loved her too. After the family lunch, we went home together, and one thing led to another, resulting in comfort sex. Neither of us wanted kids at that point, but then I found out that my yod had slipped into my cervix, and I ended up getting pregnant. Both of us were unsure about introducing a kid into our relationship, but we ultimately decided to get back together and give it another shot. I had always wanted to be a mom and didn't want to have an abortion, so we were hopeful. Unfortunately, we found out pretty early into the pregnancy that it was actually a molar pregnancy. Instead of a normal fetus, I was pregnant with a tumor. I had to have the mole removed, and to my dismay, I ended up being one of those unlucky people who develops cancer from a molar pregnancy. Thankfully, the cancer was caught when I was only at stage Roman 2 and responded really well to chemotherapy. I've been cancer-free since 2016, and that's something I'm incredibly grateful for. However, my ex's behavior during the time I was extremely sick from chemo we had stayed together after losing the pregnancy finally pushed me to my breaking point. He wouldn't or couldn't step up and take care of things around the house, even when I was too weak from cancer treatment to do much of anything. I couldn't depend on him for even the smallest tasks, and that lack of support made me realize I couldn't do it anymore. A week after I was declared cancer-free, I told him I was moving out and that I wanted a divorce. I moved back in with my mom for a year while the divorce was being finalized, and I stayed a bit longer after that to get back on my feet. Eventually, I decided I needed a fresh start. So I got a job in a new city and fulfilled a dream I'd been contemplating for a while. I went back to college in 2017 to get my BSN. I enrolled in an accelerated program since I already had a degree, and by 2019, I graduated and became a neonatal nurse. The job can be tough, but it's so rewarding to see tiny, sick babies grow stronger and finally go home with their families. It feels like I've truly found my calling. During my time back at school, I met a guy in my class. For 2 years, we were just friends because I didn't feel ready to date. But in 2019, we finally started a relationship. Fast forward to 2022, and that guy is now my husband. He's everything I could have hoped for in a partner, someone I can fully rely on and who can lean on me as well. I don't have to nag him to pick up his socks or help around the house, and he even does most of the cooking since I hate it. After chemo, I went into premature ovarian failure, but we're starting IVF in the new year with eggs I had frozen before treatment. We're also exploring adoption or fostering in the future. I'm confident my husband will be an amazing father and that he'll support me through anything. At the time of my divorce, I had zero confidence my ex would have been capable of either. I don't want to just bash my ex though. He's actually doing much better since we got divorced. About a month after I left for good, he attempted suicide and was placed on a 72-hour hold at the hospital. That moment was a huge wake-up call for him. He took the advice to follow up with a psychiatrist seriously, and after evaluations, he was diagnosed with ADHD. Looking back, it explains so much about how he was when we were together: his forgetfulness, his struggles to manage responsibilities, and his emotional outbursts. Not long after that, he was also diagnosed with autism. It felt like pieces of a long missing puzzle finally falling into place. We don't speak anymore because it's too painful for both of us, but my mom is still close with his mom and has shared some updates. He's taking medication that has significantly helped him manage his ADHD, and with that stability, he was able to enroll in trade school. Now, he has a much better job and is in a steady, healthy relationship. I truly wish him the best, and I'm relieved that he's finally getting the help he needed. When I look back at my old posts, I can't help but shake my head. I was putting up with so much back then, things I'd never tolerate now. At 24, I thought I had everything figured out just because I was married. But in reality, I still had a lot of growing up to do. Part of me feels a bit sad for my ex because he was struggling silently for so long, and I wrote him off as just unhelpful and immature. But even with those medical reasons, I still had to prioritize my own well-being. I was at my breaking point, and I don't regret leaving. Given how well we're both doing now, I think we're truly better off apart. Oh, and for those who've followed the snake saga, I still talk to my ex's friend, the cobra breeder, every now and then. Bucatini, the Burmese python, is doing great in his new home at the reptile sanctuary.